Good morning. My name is Don Michaelman, and this is the June 30th, 2022 meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have, well, let's go ahead and introduce the commission members. One of our members is attending by Zoom, and Susan, if you want to introduce yourself first, then we'll go to Tom.
Great when I did it. It worked great when I did it.
Susan, we're not hearing you.
I could hear all you guys. All your mutterings.
Can you try again?
I think they can always hear us.
Yeah.
It's all that they're muted.
Susan, can you try again? Totally went away. Well, right now she doesn't have a mic, so I don't know. She might be calling in.
Okay. Tom Hutchins, would you start the introduction, please?
Well, good morning to all you out there. My name is Tom Hutchison.
Tom Riley.
Good morning, everyone. Ted Gambogi.
Good morning, Stan Goligoski.
Staff members will introduce themselves when
This
they...
is Commissioner Susan Graham. Can you hear me now?
There you go, Susan.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Glad to have you here, or there. This is an open public hearing and is being taped, recorded, and videotaped by the city. Proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, the public, local cable and/or radio stations, and may be also rebroadcast. The numbers of commissioners present is 6, including 1 on Zoom. It will require a majority vote of those present to pass a motion. As some individuals may be attending this meeting remotely, all parties wishing to be heard, including commission members, are required to state their name prior to speaking in order to ensure accurate minutes. Members of the public, when called upon, are required to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. I also would like to have you check your cell phones, make sure they're either turned off or on mute. Would appreciate that on it. Just as a reminder, we're not going to be having the item concerning the rezoning on Willow Creek, just in case anybody came in late concerning that or on Zoom on that part. The first item is the minutes from the June 9th, 2022. We are going to defer voting on the minutes. A question has come up. I know that disappoints the commission members, but this is something we're going to have to do.
I'm out of here.
Next item on the agenda is MP 22-001, Master Plan Amendment for Granite Dells Estates for Phases 6, 7, and 8. Property owner Mike Fan, applicant Dorn Homes, Inc. George, we're going to look at both these together or treat them separately?
I would like to make the presentation together, but the actions would be separate. If you choose to make recommendations in favor of them, we'll have them as separate motions for you at the end.
Okay.
All right, thank you. My name is George Worley. I'm the planning manager for the city of Prescott. This project involves a master plan amendment to Granite Dells Estates, which has been in the city and has had a master plan for nearly 10 years. And a subdivision plat to follow that master plan. So we'll walk through these one step at a time. First, to show you generally where it is. Aerial photo shows the existing Granite Dells Estates area. The sort of greenish highlighting is the area that's under the existing master plan. This is State Route 89A. And this roadway leads up to the interchange at 89A and Side Road. The area in question is just this eastern portion. And several years ago, Granite Dells Estates master plan covered the entire property. But as a result of a change in development styles, more of this smaller lot development, as you see in the upper portion was what the market was asking for. The developer chose to request a modification to his master plan, contracting the master plan into a smaller area with the same number of lots effectively, but making those lots smaller, more in line with the lots that were the market, the key market area, target area at the time, and excluding this area from the master plan of the project. At the time, he told the city, both Planning Commission and ultimately City Council, who approved that action, that at some future date, someone will come in with a development proposal for the remainder of the property, but it would be separate from his development, which was underway at the time. This is a request to create a new section of the master plan, extending that master plan over the area that formerly was covered by the master plan, and creating a new subdivision plat within that area. So these are additional lots above and beyond what was contracted into the current Granite Dells estates. And I'll walk through the layout of lots in just a moment to show you how they match up. This is not terribly uncommon. Master plans change in dimensions occasionally. We usually see them expand rather than contract as they did before, so this is more normal to see them expand to cover more ground. And in this particular case, they are expanding to a number that actually already has a water allocation to it. And we don't normally talk to you about water, but in this particular case, that was one of the reasons why this expansion is being proposed. There's water available for development of additional lots in that area. And to do it, they need a master plan and they need a subdivision plat. So that's what's before you today. From this picture, you can see the sort of lighter green is the existing master plan. The proposed new master plan is the slightly darker green. The development pattern is nearly identical. Interconnectivity of the subdivisions at several points occur. There's a road connection here, which is one of the primary road connections, and then there's another connection down here. So the subdivision that's proposed in the new master planned area looks like will develop similar to and is connected to the existing development in the subdivision. It is an expansion of the concept into the new area. I have a slightly zoomed in version of that just to give you a little bit better look. And to point out that at some future date, this roadway was intended to continue to connect to a future interchange that is probably some years away called Great Western. That would happen on State Route 89A east of our current boundary and probably by that time in the boundaries of Prescott Valley. That's a future connection, so at this point, this is a dead end. The roadway and all access occurs through the existing Granite Dells estates, and they have 2 points of access now, and with the future development of AED, if you remember all of the discussions about AED's annexation and development, AED South will contribute to, and ultimately the city will construct another crossing of Granite Creek to provide an access to 89. That's probably several years away at this point, but again, providing a third access into Granite Dells estates.
George, do you have a map that shows both accesses?
I think this one probably does the best. So this is the primary interchange. This roadway is Dells Ranch Road, I believe. It runs up to the interchange, Granite Dells Parkway, thank you. Dells Ranch Road is the one that goes sideways, to an interchange up here. The other access is crossing the Peavine Trail here and through this industrial subdivision. So it's a secondary now. It's not going to be used as a primary by residents. And then this would be that future roadway. It will come across here, and right about there, it'll deviate and cut across AED's property and then cross Granite Creek with a low water crossing / bridge type construction.
Thank you.
The subdivision plat covers phases 6, 7, and 8 What they've done is simply taken the last phase of Granadell's Estates and added additional phases. So not only is this an expansion of the master plan to cover the area, but it is a continuation of the already existing development pattern through plats. So that is laid out. The alignments, the streets, the lot sizes are very, very similar to the existing development pattern already in Granadell's Estates. We've talked great deal about airport compliance and anything that's near the airport. We talked about it with some projects that you've seen in Deepwell Ranch, and this area is close enough to the airport that we've looked at those similar circumstances. One of the requirements for developments in close proximity to the airport is to record an avigation easement. That is an easement that acknowledges aircraft overflight and indemnifies the city from noise impacts and things like that. The purpose of that easement is protection for the airport and notification to future property owners. They're not going to buy this property without knowing that there's an airport nearby. That has been completed by the developer. They recorded that easement prior to this meeting. There's an additional FAA requirement that's not directly a city requirement, and that's a height evaluation for structures. So they'll do a height evaluation prior to construction of the water, sewer, and street infrastructure because grading can affect things. And then they'll do a second height evaluation. The term is 7460. It's a form number that the FAA uses, so you'll probably get used to hearing that. 7460 is the height evaluation. They'll do that again at the actual construction of homes to verify that, again, that homes aren't going to be any issue for aircraft overflights. And then one last thing that has been requested of most developments in the vicinity of the airport and accomplished in some places is a fair notice disclosure to the end user property owner. Either something incorporated into CC&Rs so they know about it, or more specifically something that's included in closing documents so the property owner not only has an easement that says they're near the airport, but they have a fair notice disclosure that says you're near an airport. They're multiple layers of trying to make sure folks know where they are in relation to the airport for the protection of the airport and for the protection of the property owner. Our recommendation, two separate actions. Move to approve the master plan first and move to approve the preliminary plat for phases 6, 7, and 8. Second, I'm happy to answer any questions you have now, and we do have a representative of the applicant, Dwayne Hunn, who's here in the audience, who can answer questions from the applicant's perspective. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Okay. Any questions from commission members? Tom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you go back to the big map, the overall map in the lower,
That one?
yeah, the lower corner, unsubdivided tract? Is that something that's going to be happening in the future, or?
It potentially could. The situation with again, we don't generally talk about water with you because it's council prerogative.
Right.
The availability of water for the number of lots shown in the proposed master plan matches up. But there's not water available currently to cover the other area, and it's been left out for some future date when they may come back and ask council for water for
Thank you.
Before we go to other questions, Susan, since you're on Zoom, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, George, Tom Hutchison here.
Yes, sir.
I'm curious why there's a surplus of water. Why is this available?
When the original annexation of Granadell's Estates occurred, there was a water agreement to allow development, and that water agreement gave a certain amount of water. A water service agreement is what we call them. And that water service agreement sets out by acre feet rather than individual lots. So the amount of lots available changes based on the water usage calculation that we have. And under the current calculation, there was sufficient water for the additional 157 lots. So it was because they granted water by a volume rather than by a number of units.
And the assumption is that a average house uses 0.17 acre feet? Is that the?
Yes,
That's the arithmetic?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Other questions? Stan?
Yeah, I've got a couple. One, that unsubdivided track there, does the Iron King run through that at all, do we know?
It's below that. So there's several hundred feet of distance space between the south edge of Granite Dells Estates boundary and the Iron Creek. It's actually in the property parcel just below this one.
It is, okay. So it does provide a little buffer.
There has been pretty serious efforts to make sure that the internal trail system, you see there's a lot of green space. The reason it's green is it's open space. That green space has trail system through it, and there is an effort to make a connection to the Iron King from this neighborhood to provide better trails connectivity.
Okay. And the other item, so several years ago, we had in the budget for roads, that bridge that was going to connect
Right.
69 or 89 to that. Is that back on the table that we know of?
It is. It was actually one of the things that was discussed during the annexation, the AED annexation discussions. That roadway, that bridge connection will be paid for by impact fees collected from developments that will use it. So in fact, this development will contribute money through impact fees towards that bridge construction in the near future.
Okay.
It's probably, again, several years away.
Okay, we're at
Maybe
several years still.
Yeah.
It's about, okay. All right, thanks.
Other questions? I have a couple, George.
Certainly.
When this first came to us, I think you and I are the only ones that are still standing that saw this.
Mostly standing, yes.
Part of this, and part of the reason that this was approved to be developed out, was in the northeast corner, there was supposed to be property set aside for affordable housing. Now, when that section of land was pulled out of the original plan and shrunk down to have the lots over in the new section, the section with affordable housing is gone. And now we're, in a sense, adding it back, but I don't see anything dealing with affordable housing.
And yes, you're correct. This corner of the property was originally zoned multifamily, and the intention was to have somewhat more affordable housing. Affordable housing is a much bigger topic that we're working on in that corner, because multifamily generally can be made more affordable just by volume of units per acre. In this particular case, they're proposing single-family residential in the smaller lot sizes that were the market pattern that created the contraction of the master plan in the first place. But we do have a representative of the developer here who may be able to talk to you about price points for the proposal and maybe give you an idea what they're thinking of in that area.
Would the developer like to come up?
Hi, Don. Mike Fan, Granite Dells Estates. So I'm not the applicant, but I am selling the land to Dorn Homes. Your memory's better than mine. So that original corner in the original master plan from 2007 or 2008, we identified that corner for workforce housing. Later on in the process, working with, at the time, Craig McConnell, and walking through the discussion on workforce housing, we got into a lengthy discussion on how can I do it? How does the city want to see me do that? And the discussion of a housing authority, the discussion of deed restrictions, or how do we sell those lots and keep them affordable? Because the buyer would immediately rise to the market. And so the discussion quickly became very interesting on what it's going to take to really do workforce housing. So there are some significant discussions going on right now about workforce housing, primarily and this is not affordable housing. This is for public safety, public services, the blue-collar worker. I'm sitting within some discussions on how we can bring that to the city, but it takes. It's when you really delve into it to keep it affordable, it becomes a real conundrum. So at the time, the discussion was, for now, let's drop the workforce housing. So the master plan approved back in, probably 10 years ago. That's when that master plan dropped the workforce housing at that time. Does that help?
It helps, but it's kind of sad in some ways that, we're having the difficulty in finding property for workforce housing.
Yep. I would agree 100%.
Yeah, so, all right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before we continue, I'd like to recognize that our mayor has joined us, and Councilmember Montoya has joined us also. And I think that's our two. Okay, thank you for attending on there. Got a couple other questions, and it may be ones for the developer. If the developer would like to make a statement and then answer questions. This will be the builder more, Mike, than versus that. You're off the hook right now.
Don't leave.
Yes, sir. Dwayne Hunn with Dorn Homes, 600 West Gurley Street, as you know.
Okay. Would you like to make a statement first before taking questions?
The only thing I'd point out is that after the great presentation that George made, is that to remind everybody that that area that we're talking about is in part of the original development agreement and still falls within that boundary, and that's why it's connected through the water. I just want to make sure that point was made. Also, we worked really hard on this layout to make sure there's open space behind every lot. We have over 40% open space in there. We intend to do a new annex of the amenity, so there'll be a new amenity in that. I don't know, maybe you can point, George, you know where it'll be up along Dells Ranch Road. And so it'll be, right there. So it'll be a second amenity for the project and be trails throughout. We'll work with the City Trails group as we do in all of our projects to make the connectivity. And so we're excited about the quality of this project. Feel like it's going to be a very successful one.
Okay. Questions for the builder? I'll make sure I say this correctly.
Yeah, Tom Hutchison here. First, Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing up the affordable housing question, the conundrum as it was described. If I may offer a suggestion that from a car business point of view, the way you satisfy this is a mix. You sell Escorts at a loss, so you can make a lot of profit on F-150s. So I'm in the same boat that Mr. Michaelman was in, and how do we satisfy blue-collar housing that is absolutely vital to the sustainability of this city? And if you guys don't do it for us, what does that say about our future?
Yeah, again, I echo what Mike said. It is a conundrum. We've been working on this. I'm personally working on it and trying to do this in previous projects in Flagstaff and in other areas of the state, and it beats its head right up against the whole property rights issue that we enjoy in this country, and it's hard to put that kind of restriction on somebody for how much they can sell their home for after we've sold it to them. So it can quickly escalate, and then if you bring houses on the market below market cost, then they quickly are bought up by people who will then resell them at higher prices. So it's very difficult to find a solution to that. We have a project in our South Ranch project in Deepwell Ranch, if that goes forward, that has much smaller lots. And our goal originally was to bring those in as a workforce housing product. The market's been pretty crazy, as we all know, and prices have dramatically gone up for construction materials and all the above. So it's really difficult to, we can do so much, but it's very difficult to cause something to be workforce housing indefinitely into the future. We've been all struggling with it. As George pointed out, even the city's working on solutions, and we'd love continue to want to work as partners with city and other agencies around the state to find solutions to this. Granite Dells Estates is not the place, in our opinion, to bring in low-cost housing, but that's probably for Mike to address more. Land is a big part of the cost of houses, and when you build it the way we're building it with all this open space and all those amenities, that's not going to come in to the market as a workforce housing price level.
And by the way, the land use code defines affordable as 30% of your salary for housing, and that includes utilities. So that's the target.
Now, there's two terms that float around. There's affordable and there's workforce housing, and those are different levels, as I understand it.
Well, I'm just telling you, land development code defines affordable as 30% of your income.
And that's generally compatible with other federal agencies that do 30 or 33% of income.
That's
As an
$1,000 to $1,200 a month. That's the kind of places we need.
We're open to ideas.
Not to preempt some of the things that are underway, but the effectiveness of creating workforce level housing in other areas of the country has been through cooperation between the local governments and development. It's not a one-sided ask the developers to do it or one-sided ask the cities to do it. Neither of them work well without some form of partnership. There's been discussions initiated very recently to look at addressing the issue again here, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder on that, but it's something to keep an eye out for. You're likely to hear about it in the very near future. That work is being done towards that goal again.
Well, I'm wondering, is this one of those opportunities? Is this one of those opportunities for us to work cooperatively with the developer and the landowner to get some affordable houses put in there?
Let me, your point very well made and taken. I guess the answer to that is if we renegotiated a development agreement, we could start doing that. Right now, the development agreement took out the workforce housing, took out the workforce housing component. I've got to agree with Mr. Hunn. There are locations, probably not this one, but mainly because of land costs that are out there and available. We are talking to another developer right now that has a much lower land value and is doing some land planning that doesn't have this level of open space and has smaller lots and does with the goal of achieving workforce housing. So those discussions are ongoing. Councilman Montoya is leading the charge there. And so we are off and running in that direction. Frankly and honestly, the city does not have the infrastructure, meaning, and when I say infrastructure, I mean the guidelines set up right now to make sure if a developer provides workforce housing, it stays workforce housing, it stays affordable. So whether it is codes and ordinances, whether it is a housing authority to monitor what's going on, what that looks like today. Those discussions are ongoing, but we're a ways away. I respectfully, this isn't the project. We're just not set up for it on this project with the amenities and the open space, but we're working on it. It's not something that has left our view and our targets.
Well, let me ask you, how far out is this in time? When would you start working on this?
Now you're talking to the wrong guy.
Well, roughly.
Commissioner, I want to make sure I understand the question. Are you asking when we would start building homes?
When do you foresee breaking ground and starting to build out there?
Probably in early '23.
So year and a half away.
6 months.
6
No,
months?
that's 6 months, I'm sorry.
6 months.
Yeah, 6 months, 8 months.
Okay. So it's not 3 or 5 years away? It's,
No.
no, okay.
Yep.
Don't leave, sir. Sorry. Other questions?
I have two questions. One, going with the line of thinking that's going on right now. In the current development agreement, is there a requirement or any kind of a requirement that the developer or the builder or anybody has to provide workforce housing?
I believe, as Mr. Fan said, that was removed in a previous revision 10 years ago.
Okay, so there's no onus on the developer or anybody involved with the project to provide that level of housing. Is that correct?
Not directly, yes.
Okay. Well, that's number one question. Number two, amenities. You said that there was going to be an amenity up in the upper left-hand corner. What do you call an amenity?
It will be,
I mean, anything from a
Chairman,
swing set to a
Commissioner Riley.
clubhouse, so.
you're probably familiar with the amenity that's at Granite Dells currently. So it would be a smaller version of that with the gym. It'd be a structure with gym, and we're still working out exactly what the details of that would be, and to be part of our final plat and construction documents coming through for the town or city, excuse me, to review as a site plan, I assume.
It's going to be a community building then.
Building with courts, whether tennis, pickleball, to be determined, but gym, probably not a large pool like is at the other one, but there's talk of some sort of splash
Okay.
pad or something like that.
You've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Susan, do you have a question for the builder?
No, I do not.
Okay. I had a couple, sir.
Yes, sir.
We're looking at some long dead ends up there. Are the houses going to be required to be sprinklered? Because you take the top part, of that.
That wasn't the interpretation, Chairman, that wasn't the interpretation we had working with city staff, that this would be required to be sprinklered because of that. Dells Ranch Road is I guess an minor arterial classification.
One of the things we're not showing on this, but does show on the plat, and unfortunately I can't show you the whole plat because it came in multiple pages of multiple sections, but if you look at the plat, there are emergency connections between most of the areas that appear to be loops now, that appear to be dead ends. There are connections to provide secondary fire access, and often when that occurs, fire sprinkler systems are not a requirement of homes. That is a fire code requirement regardless of subdivision platting, and if they trigger the requirement, they will put sprinklers in, whether we say so now or not. So
Okay.
if they get into a situation where the home construction or the access is limited to a point where it triggers the fire code's requirement for sprinklers, they will be compelled to put sprinklers in.
Chairman Michaelman, if I may continue, at the very northeast corner there, you see what is the lines depicting the existing, I think it's county right-of-way?
It's a county road at the moment.
County right-of-way. And we have, on the plat, there is an easement connecting that last road to that county right-of-way right in that location to provide that potential secondary access point if needed.
Up near the water tank up there?
Exactly.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Other question I have is, since this is in proximity to the airport, and fair notice has to be given to the buyers of the home, could you walk me through on how they are notified and what documents they have to sign, whatever, so they are fully aware of what the situation is?
And I'm going to ask Mike to help with this on the global level, because I know he's talked with airport staff recently. But as the builder, we include in our public report the easement that has been recorded, along with statements about the vicinity of the airport. We show in our sales brochures the airport on a map in the vicinity so that everybody can see that vicinity. And we also include, I believe there's an agreement to put in the CC&R some language to make sure everybody's aware of that. They have to read that when they buy their home, and those stay with the land. So
If I walked in there and said, I want to buy your Model A here because I'm in love with that, it's just exactly what I want, what am I going to have to read that you know I'm reading, or I'm going to have to sign? Because there's a lot of paperwork a buyer of a home goes through, and do they read it or don't they read it? But when they sign something, they've said they've read it. Do you have something like that?
Chairman Michaelman, I can't speak to, if people don't read everything they sign, we can't be responsible for that, of course. But they do sign documents that have that, the public, that they've acknowledged they read the public report, which has the airport language in it. And there are disclosures in the sales documents for that also. But it's, this project will need unique ones drawn as this discussion came up in our meeting 2 weeks ago on South Ranch, and when we move forward again on that project, we'll talk further on that one, but there will be specific disclosures for this project. It's in a different situation, so.
Well, I'm not
That's our
trying to put
intent.
you in the hot spot here. I'm just looking down the road that someone, buys a home here. Well, I didn't know I was under an airport runway. You got all the documents in the paperwork, but if they've signed something says, I understand that these rules apply to me because of the airport there and so forth, it's a lot easier to say, you signed this, you understand it versus otherwise.
Chairman Michaelman, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. You're making a good point, and we do the best we can. As I said in 2 weeks ago, our salespeople try very hard to make sure people understand the vicinity of the airport, and some people don't buy homes in our projects because of the vicinity to the airport. So others don't have an issue with it. So I'm not sure what you're asking, other than that we do what we can to make sure they're aware of it. And it's certainly in the documents that they're signing off on.
Okay. Any other
Multiple
questions?
locations.
Builder? Thank you, sir. Appreciate you taking your time to come up here. You stand?
I have a question, but I think it's a George question.
Okay.
Thank you.
sir.
George, so can we go over the overall master plan? So as we come in off of Granadell's Parkway, what is that currently zoned?
This area is a commercial zoning district.
It is. Okay, good. Do we know if there are any potential commercial coming in there? The reason I'm saying this is because we're building a lot of homes in there. We're up in the Deep Well Ranch. I mean, I see this as relief to Willow Creek as much as if we build commercial in there. I mean, I haven't seen anything go in there. I've seen the land cleared, but what is it looking like right now?
So there are a couple of things. I'm going to try and show you on this one thing. At this point, there is a proposed multifamily development which is allowed in commercial on this property, on this corner.
So it's a mixed use?
Leaves three corners available for neighborhood-type commercial uses, things that would support a relatively small population. This looks big, but from a city perspective, that's a small population to serve from commercial. So there's a potential there. And I think from the aerial, not quite. I cut off the top of this. This roadway and its connection with 89A, the property on both sides of it are business regional zoning.
Right.
And because of its proximity to the interchange with State Route 89A, that is prime commercial property and it's regional commercial property. A grocery store, small shopping center type setup there would, I hate to use the word steal, but it would steal tax dollars from Prescott Valley for the whole north half of Prescott Valley, as well as serve all of this area.
Absolutely.
It's a good location for that. I would not anticipate anything of that scale here. Here, maybe something smaller, the little shopping center with a Starbucks in it, or hairdressers, laundromats, dry
Right.
cleaners, that scale of business more likely in the neighborhood.
Right. And then there's a frontage road too, off of the frontage road that comes off of Granadell's Parkway, I think it's called frontage road or front road.
It's side road.
Side road, thank
Yeah,
you.
and it goes over and connects to this industrial neighborhood.
Okay, what about that land that's along, so if you come off of Granadell's Parkway, go south?
All of that is the business regional zoned property that potentially could accommodate a larger regional center.
Okay. I mean, again, overall, what I'm just looking as relief as a town master
Exactly.
plan, okay. If we continue to add houses, I'm just putting on my planning hat and thinking,
Yep.
we've got to do something that reliefs, provide some relief to Willow Creek, honestly.
Unfortunately, what we've seen from commercial developers in the past is you actually have to have the houses there, not zoned for houses, not subdivided for houses, actual houses, before they will look at bringing something of a fairly large scale like a grocery store to an area. So that makes it a little bit harder to provide the services in close time proximity to the actual construction of the homes. The homes kind of have to happen first, and then commercial comes in following it. There are ways to work around that, and that property to the north, part of that property, most of that property belongs to AED, as you know, who has development proposals on both the north and south side of 89A. And commercial coming in could help them a great deal with development on either north or south of AED's property. So we're hoping that that may help move it a little bit faster, rather than have all of this build out and then a commercial interest come in and say, okay, I've got houses, now I'm going to build a grocery store.
Right, yeah.
Could probably
Thanks,
put a
George.
Dunkin' Donuts there, huh?
Could. Might be a great spot for one.
I would say so.
Other questions? George, we're in the process of doing a revised airport overlay program. I think the June 14th meeting of the city council, there was discussion.
Mr. Chairman, you're stealing my thunder. Next item on the agenda was going to talk a little bit more about that, but you're correct. We're moving forward with some airport protections through our zoning code that will provide much better protection for the airport that would cover much of this area.
My question on this, and we can go ahead and expand on it there when we get to that point, is there a potential of that overlay having an effect upon this property?
We've looked at this property from the perspective of the requirements of the overlay, and I don't believe so. One of the things that we've looked at are various impact zones and noise contours and things that affect development and affect the enjoyment of property owners once they move in. And most of this area is outside of those potential impacts. The airport overlay that we're going to talk about just briefly now, give you a heads up before the joint meeting that we've already talked to you about, is to codify some of the things that are already being enforced. We have airport plans and we have recommending documents like the airport specific area plan that covers the area, and there are controls that are hinted at but not zoning level controls in those documents, and we've been enforcing them to the best of our ability. But once we incorporate it into a zoning overlay, it becomes the same as every other zoning requirement, from uses to setbacks to building heights, just like anything else in zoning. So I don't think what we're doing today would create a situation that becomes non-conforming with the new adoption.
George, every time we have a housing development out in that neck of the woods, the topic of the airport comes up. So without interpretation, when will we have the results of that overlay?
We contacted you regarding a joint meeting with City
Right,
Council.
that's on the
purpose
calendar
of
for the
that-
19th, right,
19th.
Kaylee?
The purpose of that joint meeting is to open up the discussion of what we propose in the airport vicinity overlay and why. So you'll get a Airport Protections 101 presentation by the airport director, and you'll get a Zoning Overlays 101 presentation by me as part of that, and then a combination of the two. What does the airport vicinity overlay actually do at that meeting? Following that meeting, we'll be back in front of you, because any modification to the land development code is effectively a rezoning and takes an action by this body to review it and recommend it to council. So you would expect that at the very next available meeting after the 19th to be in front of you for discussion in more detail.
I think, to Chairman Michaelman's question, the question is there anything going to come out of that that would impact this? Now, you said, I don't think so, but it's not finalized, right?
And that's why I said I don't think so. Based on the language drafted thus far, it would not. But part of the reason for a joint meeting and part of the reason for the public process we follow is that you and the public who are affected by things have an input into what the document says. It can change between what I have written so far and what ends up in front of council for an adoption.
And if I remember right, the overlay trumps anything that's underneath.
So an overlay zoning, and this will be part of the 101 I give you, the overlay zoning is another layer of control on top of the existing underlying zoning. So you may have single-family zoning, and the overlay could say no single-family uses because of other things, such as, in this particular case, close proximity to the airport or areas that are within noise boundaries that are incompatible with residential uses.
Tom?
This overlay zone that may or may not affect the existing subdivisions that are already approved, the overlay is not going to be retroactive. So you can't go back and say, well, the subdivision right next to it has to comply, or
It would depend on one thing. It would depend on more than one thing. Some of the requirements of the airport overlay can be as specific as individual home construction requirements, noise mitigation in the construction of the buildings. Those things are applicable to any new application that comes in. So if you own a vacant lot in a subdivision, the subdivision itself may have predated the zoning and is therefore illegal nonconforming. Zoning does not apply backwards. That's been firmly established by the Supreme Court and numerous other courts. You don't apply zoning backwards. But individual homes would still have to comply with the requirements of that overlay for their construction if they apply within the particular boundaries of that development.
does the current overlay, does it have any requirements for the home construction in this subdivision?
Not specifically. However, we have done some pretty thorough research as part of the development of the basic draft AVO. I'm sorry, I'm using acronyms. AVO is Airport Vicinity Overlay. AVO, looking at the impacts of the current requirements of building codes, specifically energy codes, and the insulation requirements of the energy codes significantly reduce interior noise levels. The goal is to try to avoid having residential development within certain noise zones where we can make your house compatible, but nothing outside is compatible. If you go out to barbecue in your backyard, the planes are flying over. You go inside, you don't hear the planes. But now you've reduced the enjoyment of a property owner's property, and what we're trying to do is to avoid having subdivisions within those noise impact zones as well as the actual potential crash impact zones. And you'll get way more information at the joint meeting than I can give you today.
Any further questions for staff, developer, or builder? Okay. Is there a motion concerning this item? Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. Anybody from the public like to make questions or comments?
We're going to look at the Zoom, too.
Yeah, I don't see anyone on Zoom doing it.
Do we know if there's anybody on Zoom that wants to make a comment
No
or
hands
question? Okay. Is there a motion concerning this item, MP 22-001? We're only going to do one item at a time.
Mr. Chairman,
Ted?
I'm in general agreement with the proposal, but I struggle over what the results of the airport overlay will tell us. And as I said earlier, every time we get out in this neck of the woods, usually Dr. Sabota is here to talk about the airport, and we're trying to piece things together in our mind of does it impact, does it not impact. And although I'm in general favor of the project, I would suggest that we postpone that till we get the results of the overlay.
If it helps with further discussion before you vote on that, the airport director is a reviewer of this and has not objected to this development. In her opinion, it meets the requirements with the aviation easement and the fair disclosure requirements and the future requirements of the FAA's 7460 on individual homes. So there is no objection from the airport to moving these two items forward to council, if it makes a difference in your motion.
Mr.
I haven't
Pham?
made a motion, I'm making a suggestion.
Yeah, and maybe I can help shed light. So I did bring, and I don't know if you can see this all right from there.
Can we project that up? or-
We used to be able to.
I can pass it around.
So that's to give you some feeling of location to the airport and the main runway. Of all of Granite Dells Estates, this property is the furthest away. This property, everything else that has already been approved by this commission and commissions before this commission and city council, everything else in the development has already been approved. This is the last piece, except for the unsubdivided parcel, which I'll be at the mercy of the city council at some point of that, or somebody will. But this is the end of it. This is the furthest away from the airport. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the current, what's it called, the airport influence area, a large portion of this is not in the airport influence area. There is a portion that is, but a large portion is. So we're right on the edge of the airport influence area. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective of the actual impact. We're not under the flight paths in this subdivision. Other parts of the subdivision that are already built out are, but this part is not. And finally, it sounds like let's consider postponing because we might change the rules in a future date. And I would ask that. That's just not fair to the builder or the developer.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. Move to recommend approval of master plan amendments, MP 22-001, Granite Dells Estates, Phase 6, 7, and 8.
Second.
We have a motion.
Who seconded?
Tom Riley.
We have a motion and seconded. Any further discussion? Kaylee, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Galagowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchison.
I'm going to vote no.
Okay.
And the rationale for that is that the is it workforce housing element that was originally in the master plan has now been deleted.
Okay. Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Commissioner Gambogi,
No, and my rationale is I'd like to get a firm position on the airport overlay before we address housing developments like these.
okay. Chairman Michaelman.
Before I vote, I'd like to make a statement on it. I am disappointed that we lost the workforce housing through all this. It was a decision that was made by various parties, but it still bothers me. I have been heavily involved in workforce housing for quite a few years now. I also lean toward, I understand about the airport overlay, but also the overlay will trump anything that's underneath it. So it's, the builder may be finding down the road that he's going to have to do something different. But, you know, I believe the builder understands that there. So I am going to vote yes for it.
Okay, the motion passes 4-2.
Next item we have is PLN 22-001, preliminary plat of Granite Dell Estates, Units 6, 7, and 8, APN 103-04-009Z, property owner Mike Van, applicant Dorn Homes. Do I hear a motion on this?
Yeah, I'd like to I'd move to recommend approval of PLN 22-001, preliminary plat of Granite Dells Estates, phases 6, 7, and 8.
Second. Tom Riley, second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Kaylee, would you call roll?
Commissioner Galagowski,
Yes.
Commissioner Graham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchison,
I'm going to stick to my guns, no.
Commissioner Riley,
Yes.
Commissioner Gambogi.
No, for the same reasons.
Okay. Chairman Michaelman.
I'm voting yes for the same reasons and comments I made before.
Okay. The motion passes 4-2.
Okay. Next on the agenda is continuing discussion of land development code amendments and potential of a joint meeting with the council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've actually talked about a lot of what I was going to talk to you about. We've been talking about doing an update to the Land Development Code to create this airport area protection through an overlay district. And one of the developments that occurred recently was a recommendation to the City Council for a joint study session with the Commission. Council took action on that earlier in the week, and we've reached out to you to try and get all of you to attend that meeting. It is Tuesday, July 19th at 1 p.m., I believe, is the time frame. The purpose of that is to introduce not only the airport vicinity overlay and what it will do, but why we're proposing to do it, both from a zoning perspective as well as from the perspective of airport protections. So this will be an hour and a half to 2 hour meeting where we will make a presentation to you. Interaction between this body and the City Council is encouraged, if not expected, to discuss the contents, the proposals, the path forward to accomplish this. So I can and will provide draft of the document to you and to the City Council in an agenda packet that will come out from the City Clerk's office. So you'll be getting that through a slightly different process, I think. We may separate it out and send it through Kaylee. That information will be a draft of the document. It is a draft that has been reviewed and agreed by staff at staff level. So that's planning staff, airport staff, other staff who may be impacted by it. So Public Works, Utilities has been partially involved in it. Things that that might affect airport protections, that's all been incorporated into it. So we believe we have a draft to start from. Obviously, those of you who have sat on this body for a while know that we bring you things that are proposed changes. We expect your input and make changes based on your input. So we're going to encourage your comments and suggestions through the process, as well as those of City Council when it reaches their level. So that basically is just a heads up and maybe a little teaser before you actually get an agenda packet with documents in it. And that's probably going to happen at least a week prior to the meeting.
Okay, questions for George? Got a couple questions, George.
Certainly.
Could you give an update on how things are going on the general plan, where we're at and so forth? We still looking for appointees or anything?
I believe the opportunity to contact council and volunteer for that committee is still open.
It is,
I
okay.
believe it's still open. I'm not sure. The council determination would be the last meeting of July, is what I heard. And I apologize, I'm asking the mayor. Likely the last meeting in July
Okay.
would be when council takes action or begins discussion of how to take action on creating a committee. From that point forward, we would expect committee meetings to start relatively soon, early fall, within a couple of months maybe, or maybe even sooner. I have my planning staff already working on it, and our intern, Sedona Ortega, who I should make stand up just to embarrass her, doing research on census data, on housing data, the beginnings of all of the research that we will be doing on this. So we've already started it from a staff level.
Okay. In the past, we had a committee that was set up reviewing North Prescott, and same type of committee that reviewed the downtown area. Is that still in the works? Is it in abeyance, or what do we know about that?
They're completing the review and work that they did on their data collection. Because we have a number of plans already in place that cover the north area, and because we've begun or will soon begin work on the general plan update, their scope has changed slightly to creating a batch of data on North Prescott that will be incorporated into the general plan. So they're going to provide us a data report rather than a series of master plans that would overlay the existing series of master plans that we already have in the area. This will provide us with information and save a considerable research time on the city side when we get a little further into the general plan process, looking at the value of lands, potential road alignments around the airport, potential development types we want to target through our economic development efforts, those types of things.
Okay. Any other comments from commission members? If not, whoops.
We got staff report?
We have just a brief staff update. You have had, you narrowly missed today having an issue requesting a rezoning for property in front of Pinion Oaks along Willow Creek Road. The property is currently zoned single-family zoning. It's RE 2 acre, which is a holding zoning, basically. It carried over from the original county zoning. The proposal today would have rezoned that property to business general. The proposal that you heard and recommended at your prior meeting for a mini storage, a self-storage, it's not mini, it's a very large building, for the property south of the access into Pinion Oaks, went to the city council and was denied in a 6-1 vote. The concerns of the neighbors for development in close proximity and of that scale was seemingly a deciding factor in that decision by council.
And that is a perfect lead-in to some comments I want to make regarding that proposal.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda. We have staff updates. That's George telling you what he thinks. So if there's something you want to discuss, maybe at the next meeting, let either Kaylee or George know, and it'll go on an agenda. And it could even be under staff updates, bullet point A, prior discussions. But we're way off agenda here.
Point of order. If a commissioner wishes to make a statement regarding any subject, aren't they allowed to do that? Does that statements have to be agendized?
They are not allowed to do that. Statements have to be agendized.
Okay.
We're done.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you for attending.
Well,
Like it.